Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to watch this recording. I'm Max, one of the co-founders of DataStream Insurance. I lead our tech and product teams. I'm happy to have Josh Fox here online as well. He's going to help me walk through some cyber insurance myths. Josh, I'll let you introduce yourself and start to jump right in.
Sounds good. I lead our brokerage team here. So we basically help you find the cyber insurance and the best policies to fit your needs. Yeah, we'll jump right into these myths and hopefully make it as simple as possible for you guys.
All right. What's our first myth here, Josh?
The first one, all cyber insurance policies are the same. So this is a pretty common misconception we get because everyone's used to getting their auto and home, which is pretty much the same no matter what quotes you get. Unfortunately, in cyber insurance, it is unstandardized at the moment. So all that means is, hey, all the coverages are going to be named something different no matter you're looking for the same thing. So it gets a bit confusing, which is why we're here to help you out. They are different, but the nice thing is we can help personalize it for you. So when you're going through it, there are a few things you should notice. So one of the big ones is, hey, we got cyber bundled into my BOP or my general liability. The one thing there is when policies are bundled, unfortunately, you have to sacrifice a few coverages here and there in order for policy to make sense for the carrier. So it is inexpensive, but it's not as comprehensive. And there are, unfortunately, some gaps there that'll leave you, kind of paying it for yourself. So that's where we see a major issue with those bundle policies. Another thing, too, we see is endorsements or riders, where a thing there is everyone's like, hey, I have cyber. And so when you show us these endorsements, that's where we kind of our ears get perked up because coverages are very limited there. Instead of the million, which is a baseline for coverages we want to see, it's at 250,000 or even lower than that. I've seen it 50,000, 100,000. And what we've been seeing in the industry is when there is a claim, that's up in the hundreds of thousands, which if you don't have insurance to cover you, it's very difficult for you to pay out of pocket. So that's where you see companies, unfortunately, going out of business because they can't eat those costs. When you are doing this, what is a high quality policy? This is why you come to us. So it has to fit your needs. So that's the one thing about us is we can help you personalize it to what you have. So that's why we dig through your application. And that's why when we bring it back to you, we take your feedback. So that way we can help you meet those needs and you're not just buying something because, you need it. We want to make sure it fits your needs and you're getting something that is going to be helpful down the line if, God forbid anything ever does happen to you. And when you're looking at these, an important thing is what insurance company is doing it. So when you're going through this, here at DataStream, we only work with companies rated A and better. All that means is they're very financially strong. They're great carriers. They do this, and we very much trust them. And they get rated by third-party, companies who do this, and we trust their ratings. So when that happens, all you need to know is, hey, we have a good policy from a great carrier, and the cyber we can kind of put in the back of our minds. And the last thing is these standalone policies, which is what we do. So the standalone policy is important because it is going to be a little more expensive, but that's the quality you're going for. You pretty much pay for what you get. And these standalone policies are going to have all the coverages you're looking for. You're going to have no holes in them, which is why we dig through them to make sure. So that way, when later down the line, you're not, hey, Josh, all of a sudden, I don't have the coverage for this incident that I'm going through. So this is why we dig through it. This is why we push for the standalone policies because you're going to be fully covered and you're not going to have to really worry about anything.
Yeah, that's great. And aside from some of these bundled options, there's also obviously a slightly different product that's getting more popular in the market, which is cyber warranty products. And these actually can play quite nicely with the standalones that we do. We have an interesting relationship with Cork, which is a great cyber warranty company. What we've seen is that for companies coming from Cork, they already have a baseline level of coverage that allows them to set a much higher deductible for the standalone insurance policies that we can shop. And since the deductible is so much higher, that can bring the premium down substantially, 30 or 40% in some cases. So there are opportunities here for certain types of these products to really actually work together, which is neat too. But really good to make sure customers aren't overall undercovered, especially in a world where hundreds of thousands of dollar events or even $1 million events can hit companies kind of all shapes and sizes, which is interesting. So I think this takes us then to our next myth, which I know you talk about this a lot with our customers and partners, Josh. I'll let you kick this one off as well.
No, absolutely. The big one is, or a big one that I always hear is, I don't need cyber coverage if I use an IT consultant or monitoring service. So we always tell people it's always great to be protected. These MSP providers, IT providers are great in helping set up your business with all the softwares that'll keep you safe, EDR, MFA, everything you don't want to worry about because it's not really your cup of tea. As much security as you can put in place, it's not always foolproof. We all know this. We have our seat belts, we have our fire extinguisher disasters because our house is built to hopefully be fireproof, but things do happen. So when those things do happen, you want insurance to kick in and help protect you. Not all security software is 100%, which we understand. And so when the bad actors unfortunately do sometimes get in, this is why you need insurance. Insurance kicks in for the coverage. They help pay for any of those losses for the coverages that are going to highlight very quickly. And the thing is, they actually audit your system. You know, IT forensics comes in to help out. They help kick them out. They help remediate all the issues that come with it. And obviously, they're going to let your IT team know, like, hey, this is kind of what happened. Not really your fault. They just unfortunately found a way to wiggle into your system. So all they make sure is in the future, it doesn't happen again from area of which they unfortunately breached your systems. So, you know, the best security you can have in the world doesn't always ensure that an event is going to happen. Having insurance there to kind of build on top of the security is what you want. You just want a tower to build it up as high as possible to protect yourself, because if something does happen, you want to make sure all your bases are covered.
Yeah, I love that. The seatbelt analogy definitely rings true to me because it kind of reminds me almost of like driving in general, right? Even if you had a world full of safe drivers, there's still going to be accidents. And I think great MSPs
Absolutely.
make sure their customers are as safe as they can be. There's still going to be cyber accidents out there because there's bad cyber folks doing things. And yeah, that's what insurance is for, is picking up all that residual risk, you know? So I can move on and talk about kind of one of the next myths, which is around pricing, which is interesting. So cyber insurance premiums, it's based only on how secure I am, right? So if I'm super secure, I should get a super low price. Your security absolutely does impact pricing, to be crystal clear. But maybe not surprisingly, it's not the first thing that impacts your pricing. So these are just some plots from the last couple years for the cyber insurance community at large. And you see on the plot on the left, you see there's a percentage every single year. And this is called the loss ratio. You can think about it basically like how much money did the insurance industry as a whole kind of lose, where if this number is ever 100%, it actually means that the insurance community is paying out more than they even got paid coming in. And of course, there's operational costs. So even if you get to a certain percentage below 100, these insurance companies might be losing money. We all know that insurance prices really spiked during 2020 and 2021 when COVID happened. A lot of people switched to more remote work, which means there was a much larger and softer attack surface for hackers to abuse. Ransomware really erupted on the scene. And you can see there being this big jump in loss ratios between 2019 and then 2020 and 2021. Well, guess what? Even if your company had the exact same size in the exact same industry and still had the same security in 2019, you're going to be paying much higher prices in 2020 and 2021 because the entire insurance industry was getting hammered by losses. So yes, absolutely, your security matters. If you had bad security versus good security, each year you would be paying more for quotes if you had bad security, but year to year, you still might be, you know, the number one and number two factors that are really going to contribute to how much you're paying is based off of what's happening sort of at the macroscopic level. And then what does your company look like? Is it a big bank or a small, you know, pretzel company? Your firmographics obviously have a huge impact as well. And I'm sure this is the kind of stuff you sometimes have to walk through with customers to make them understand the pricing stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Max. So the biggest thing is the peers, like you're saying. So a lot of times people are like, oh, hey, I'm really good, but they forget we take the average of your peers. So your industry. That's why I always tell people get it beforehand, because a sad example is what's been happening with the medical industry. And there has been some hospitals and urgent care that I was working with earlier in the year, and they're like, oh, no, we'll push it off. And with all these major attacks, they're like, we need insurance now. And compared to the beginning of the year, where it was a few $1,000s cheaper, it's now more expensive because, hey, your industry is now seen as a hot target for these bad actors. So, you know, it's better to get it early on because you never know what'll happen in your industry, especially if you're in one of the riskier ones. I always tell people, you know, be preventative, don't be reactive to it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think where DataStream eventually wants to go is we train machine learning models every single day to try to better evaluate the cyber risk of companies in terms of insurance losses, dollars and cents. What does your company actually look like from a risk perspective? And what we'd really like to do long term and see where the industry goes as well is actually understand better and better what is truly correlated to cyber risks, so that if you are a very secure healthcare company, maybe you don't get grouped in the same pricing. But near term, like Josh said, you're going to get judged by sort of your peers and your averages. And even if you look great, you'll get a better price probably than your bad peers, but your overall peer group is going to define a lot of that pricing. Another big myth that's one of the bigger boogeymans, I think, for this whole space is that, hey, this is like cyber insurance. I'm going to buy a policy and then it's not even going to pay out when something bad happens. And I really want to dispel this myth in particular because by and large, you know, there are entire agencies actually that evaluate insurance products, and they're essentially looking for things which are trying to to dupe buyers. If there was some insurance company out there that was selling some cyber miracle pill that never paid out, they would get regulators on them quickly and that product pulled off the shelf. So like Josh mentioned, we work with carriers that have really high ratings. They have good financial backings and the products pay out. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be offered. Again, these products are not things that are fool's gold. They really are solid products. They should pay out. The thing that obviously still does happen, unfortunately, is that the most common reason that policies are either paid less or not at all is because the applicant accidentally has a fraudulent application. What that means is that if I were applying for a life insurance policy and said I had no pre-existing conditions, but then actually had a ton of pre-existing conditions that was only discovered after I died, those are the sad, small percentage of policy claims that sometimes get denied because it was so different than the actual application that they were priced differently as well. This is why we really try to make sure your IT team, whether it's internal or your external IT team with your MSP, is checking and making sure that the questions that you're responding to are correct, and why we are continuing to push integrations directly with cyber tools so that we're getting data directly from your network to validate the answers that you are putting on your application, because that's the most important thing to make sure that in this process is correct, is that everything is true, so that when you eventually, if you ever had a claim, that there would be no issue with something being off between what you said and what they see when they audit your network.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree, especially on our side. The application is the biggest one, especially when we talk to underwriters, because they're like, hey, we agreed to the application is basically the contract they're holding out to, which is why we make you review those answers 2-3 times before we even let that policy be bound. So it's a big one. And it's always nice too, because it's, hey, we answered this, you agreed, we met all the, what we said. And so now when it comes to it, they're like, yeah, cool. Everything was answered truthfully. And here we go. We're going to pay you out. So there's never been a worry with us. Unfortunately, we have had people who have had claims, but because we've been so stringent on them reviewing their own applications, it's always been paid out and there hasn't really been any issues.
Yeah, it's great. Big thing to take away from here. You shouldn't be worried. These are great products, but as with the rest of life, we need to be truthful on these things to make sure there's no misunderstandings later. The last myth we'll cover here is that cyber insurance is basically complicated and painful. It's hard to get a policy. And this can be true. We think especially if you are using some local brokers, which might give you a stack of PDFs, and each insurance carrier requires you to fill out a different dozen-page long document, and your local insurance broker, if they can't find you quotes with a couple carriers they know really well, they might need to get you to fill out even more of these as they try to shop a bigger network. This is where we think DataStream really can make the whole process easier. With our platform, you can fill this out alongside anybody else from your company or anybody else from an external IT provider like your MSP, so that together you can complete this application. What we see typically is if the right people are on the application, this can be done in less than 30 minutes, often 15 or 20, working with the IT specialist. And within minutes of submitting the application via our digital system, you can get back dozens of quotes within 10 minutes. So we try to make this process as streamlined as possible. We have clear explanations of terms and definitions and questions throughout the entire application. You can stop and save at any point. You can add people and come back to it later. And ultimately, once you get quotes, you can, wait and see if more come over time, and then talk to an expert on our side, on our brokerage team, like Josh, and they can walk you through which of these policies makes the most sense and try to just make sure you really get the best policy for what matches your business. Anything else you want to throw in on here, Josh?
Yeah, I just want to tell people, especially when I do talk to them the first time, is hey, take me at my word. But the nice thing too is you can just go test it out. All the quotes are non-committal. You can look at them and be like, hey, it makes sense for me. It doesn't make sense for me. So you come back a little bit later when your, systems are brought up to speed or to the standard of what cyber insurance requires. And then once you do it, you can always talk to us. And I think that's the biggest thing is you don't know what you don't know, unfortunately. And so when you're digging through these, you might think it looks good. And then you get a review from us and we're just like, hey, actually, that quote you got from your local broker is actually missing this, and the third. And then you're just like, oh, wow, I didn't have that idea. So we'll always be honest with you because at the end of the day, we want you to be safe because it does us no good if we're giving you a bad product or reviewing a product and being like, hey, that does look good. Feel free to reach out to us no matter what.
Yeah, totally agree. And this is why we do what we do. Cyber is going to continue to grow in general. We know the world's going to continue to get more technological And insurance is a fantastic way to make sure your business can have that extra layer of protection in kind of ever-changing landscape. We want to make sure you get the thing that actually makes sense for you. And like Josh said, this is a free service we provide, getting these quotes from, again, 30 plus carriers, and it doesn't take that much time. We'll be happy to do free policy reviews and other steps along the way just to make sure, again, we understand who you are, that you understand what you're getting into, and hopefully we can land you a policy that makes you sleep better at night with your business. So that's everything we have for today. So I'm sure there's no other cyber insurance myths you'll ever have to face, but if you do, we'll make a part 2 of this and make sure that we dispel those as well. Yeah, thanks Josh for joining me for this. This is a fun one.
Anytime, Max. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Talk to you guys soon and have a great one. Bye.